because this spurred the growth of discount brokerages. And they promised these high volume, low cost models, and this was supposed to be the death knell for financial advice and in the industry. That didn't happen. There's more financial advisors today than there was back in May 1st, 1975. So what happened was the industry evolved. And they evolved from just giving advice on buying and selling individual stocks and bonds to portfolio management and how these different components work together. In the last 20 years, we've seen another evolution towards wealth management and looking at things outside the portfolio and looking at all these different aspects of people's personal finances. So the value proposition has been a moving target over time, which is another reason why it's been so hard to figure out what is the value of financial advice. We don't have a framework for it. Warren Buffett, in a letter to shareholders, once famously said, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." If we take a look at it, the message about financial advice has been hijacked onto the side of costs. There's a ton of focus on the cost side of the equation, but what we need to do is put more focus onto the value side of the equation. In the absence of a framework for value, people can only focus in on cost. So let's take a look at a framework for the value that you add as a financial advisor, potentially. There are 3 pillars, and a lot of focus has been on the portfolio management pillar. And I'm going to tell you right now, portfolio management is basically commoditized at this point. There's been so much advancement in portfolio management that the amount of value that you can add to a client's life trying to build a better portfolio is not a good return of investment on your time. The other 2 pillars, behavior management and wealth management, they yield a lot more potential for adding value and demonstrating value to your client. So let's take a look at these 2 in turn, starting with behavior management. We are hardwired to make bad decisions about money. So as Nancy explained, my undergraduate degree is in neuroscience, and I'm telling you, we are literally hardwired to make bad decisions about money. And I'm going to prove that to you. So the brain is no doubt our most powerful ally. And to give you an example of that, I'm going to ask everyone in this room to read out loud the next slide that I'm going to show you. Now, a little preface. I'm not here to try and make you look foolish, so don't worry about feeling embarrassed or anything like that. We're not going to all of a sudden start doing trust falls, all right? I'm not one of those speakers. But I just want you to humor me. This is just a little brain teaser. I want you to read out loud the next slide as best as you can, all right? And I'm going to read the first line for you, but then I want you to continue. So here we go. This message serves to prove how our, please continue.
Minds can do amazing things, impressive things. In the beginning, 17 was hard, but by now and on some things remind us creating us automatically with our even thinking about it. Be proud, only certain people can read this.
All right, so everyone is able to come up with the same answer. You all said the same thing. You all chuckled at the end. But this is crap. This doesn't say anything. And yet you are all able to come up with the exact same answer. Why? In the absence of information, our brains are designed to fill in the gaps. And they were designed to do this so that we wouldn't die when we were living in caves. What the heck do I mean by that? That requires some explanation. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're a cave person and you're chilling out in your cave and you decide, I'm going to go outside for some fresh air. You go outside, you're stretching, and then you hear the roar of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now you know that your instinct would be to immediately turn in the opposite direction and run away as fast as you can, right? Our instincts are incredibly powerful, and they allow us to make split-second decisions based on very limited information. Evolutionary biologists say that we have 4 primal instincts that drive most of our behaviors. They're called the 4 F's, F as in Frank. And they are, F number 1 is fighting, F number 2 is fleeing, F number 3 is feeding, and F number 4 is making love. It always takes a second. But these instincts are incredibly powerful, and they drive most of our behaviors, especially the ones that get us into trouble. So imagine for a second that we didn't have that ability. that we didn't have the ability to make split-second decisions based on very limited information, and instead, our brains needed all the information possible about a situation before we would make up our minds about anything. So let's rewind our scenario. We're chilling out in our cave and we decide we want to go out and get some fresh air. So we go outside, we stretch, and now we hear the roar of a Tyrannosaurus Rex again. And yes, for everyone who's wondering, I know that T-Rexes and humans were 65 million years apart. Just go with it. So we hear the roar of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but remember, we don't have the ability to make split-second decisions anymore. So we would think, that sounded like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But you know, I've got 5 senses of perception and I've only used 1. I've got 4 more senses. I don't have all the information yet. So you would turn to confirm with your sense of sight that, yes, this indeed looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I've got 3 more senses. I don't have all the information yet. So you get close enough to confirm with your sense of olfaction, smell. Yes, this indeed smells like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I've got 2 more senses, don't have all the info. You get close enough to confirm with your sense of touch that, yes, this indeed feels like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And before you could get close enough to lick it, you would be dead. Hence, your brain developed the ability to make split-second decisions based on very limited information so that we wouldn't die when we were living in caves. This is very important. So, for that reason, the brain is absolutely our most powerful ally. But for the exact same reason, the brain is our most powerful enemy, because while it's so good for keeping us alive in the short term and the perpetuation of our species and the survival of our species in the short term here and now, those same processes will kill us financially, because every financial decision people make is a trade-off between the present and the future. Right? But we are hardwired. 99% of our evolution has been hardwired to think about short-term survival. It's only the last 1% of our evolutionary lives that we needed to start thinking about long-term trade-offs. And the last part of our brains to evolve, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of our brain that makes those trade-off decisions. And personal finance is all about trade-offs. That's why we're hardwired to make bad decisions about money. So as a result of this, in our evolution, we've developed what are called heuristics and cognitive biases, these little mental shortcuts that, for the most part, are pretty beneficial to us. But again, when it comes to making decisions about money, can cause us to make some strange decisions. So one of these cognitive biases is what's known as anchoring, and it's more formally known as anchoring and adjustment. And essentially, this is the process by which, when we're making decisions, we have a tendency to anchor or latch on to some piece of information, some initial piece of information, and then we adjust up or down from that reference point. It's called anchoring and adjustment. So here's how it works. Researchers asked 1,000 people to answer 2 simple questions. Question number 1, take the last 3 digits of your phone number and add 400. So as an example, the last 3 digits of my phone number are 114. And if I were to add 400, my number would be 514. Would you all agree that if I had everyone write down the last 3 digits of your phone number plus 400 on a piece of paper, we'd have a series of random numbers because your phone numbers are randomly assigned? All right, so that's question number 1. Question number 2, what year was Attila the Hun conquered in Europe? Yeah, if you're like me, you have no bloody idea. So would you agree that if I asked everyone in this room to write down the answer to question number 2, you'd basically all be guessing? Okay, so a funny thing happens when you plot people's phone numbers against their guesses as to when Attila the Hun was conquered in Europe. It's almost a perfect correlation. So the question is, what possible bearing does your phone number today have on when Attila the Hun was conquered in Europe? There's always one person who's trying to figure out. There is no link. This is completely irrational. This is because your brain is designed to anchor and adjust. So here's what happens. You've got nothing else to go on, right? When it comes to answering that question about when Attila the Hun was conquered in Europe, you have nothing to go on. But your brain is designed to anchor and adjust. So the only piece of information swimming around in your brain was the answer to question number 1, which was your phone number plus 400. With nothing else to go on, your brain will latch onto that because there's nothing else to latch onto, and then just up or down from there. That's why people's guesses are almost perfectly correlated to their phone numbers. That's how we're hardwired. And remember, in the absence of information, our brains are designed to fill in the gaps, and sometimes it fills in those gaps with crap, right? It's designed to do that. It makes us do foolish things, but there's a reason why we're hardwired to do this. If anyone remembers their Statistics 101, there's a difference between what are called type 1 errors and type 2 errors. A type 1 error is a false positive. That's where you identify something as existing when in fact it does not. A false positive. A false negative is when you identify something as non-existing when it in fact does, right? It's a false negative. So that's type 1 and type 2 errors. And so evolutionary biologists also believe that we have a bias towards making type 1 errors. We have a bias towards making false positives. And the reason we have this is, again, so that we wouldn't die. So let me give you an example. Let's go back to our cave person example. We're wandering around in the fields, and there's a lot of bushes around. And then we hear a rustling in a bush right near us. And you know that you have a startled response when you hear loud, sudden noises, right? And so this is our type 1 error bias kicking in. Because that noise could be one of two things. It could be the wind, which is harmless, or it could be a saber-toothed tiger ready to kill us, right? Very dangerous. So if we are hardwired to always assume it's the saber-toothed tiger, whenever we hear the rustling of leaves, we start to run away immediately, right? Whenever you hear a loud sound, you get frightened, you start to want to run away. And so maybe you start running away, and then you turn to confirm to see what it was, and it's just the wind, and you looked really foolish. But you didn't die. That's the point. Imagine if we had a type 2 bias when it comes to our decision making. And so we hear this rustling of the leaves in this bush, and we think, oh, well, it's probably just the wind. And then you turn to confirm it, and it's in fact a saber-toothed tiger, you'd be dead, right? So not good for long-term survival. Hence, we are wired towards these type 1 error biases when it comes to decision making, which leads us to do foolish things, but it doesn't lead us to die, right? So it heightens our likelihood of succeeding as a species. So let's now start to tie all this into financial decision making and how you can apply this kind of brain science to your practice and your clients' lives. What do you think people anchor onto on a credit card statement, right? You get your credit card statement in the mail, your clients scan all the information. What do they zero in on? Minimum payment due, right? So there was this researcher out of the UK named Neil Stewart, and he had this hypothesis that when people don't know what they're doing when it comes to managing their money, and because anchoring and adjustment is one of the most strongest cognitive biases that we have, he thought that by putting minimum payment due information on credit card statements leads people to anchor to that minimum payment due and adjust from that low number. So when they get their statement, it says minimum payment due this month is $50. They anchor to the 50 and they think, oh, if I pay 60, I'm doing good. Right? No, that's not how you manage credit, as you know. And so what he wanted to do to test this hypothesis, he ran this ingenious little experiment. And what he did was he gave a whole bunch of people these new credit card statements, and he removed all the minimum payment due information from all their statements. Now, there's only two types of credit card users in the world. You've got people who use their credit card on a regular basis, they get their bill, they see the balance outstanding, they pay it off in full. And then you've got everybody else, right, who carries a balance from month to month. So what Neil did was he took everyone in those two groups and removed the minimum payment due information from their credit card statements. And here's what happened. If you're in the group of people that always paid your credit card off in full every single month, there was no change to your behavior because you never looked at the minimum payment due anyways. But if you're in the second group of people who always carried a balance from month to month and were paying interest, etc., by removing the minimum payment due and removing that anchor, not only did your payment go up, it went up by 70%. Not 17, 70. 70. Why? Because you no longer had an anchor weighing down your decision making. You then had to figure out, well, how much should I pay off this credit card bill as opposed to anchoring to the minimum payment due. So if you have clients who carry balances on their credit cards, one simple technique that you could suggest to them is, as soon as you get your statement in the mail, get a highlighter and highlight the balance outstanding, or get a pen and cross off the minimum payment due, and just think about how much you should be paying off against your credit card. That one simple change, removing the anchor or changing the anchor, will yield a change in behavior without them even really noticing it. Now, I think it's probably impossible to be a financial advisor in 2000.